Hello everyone and welcome back to Mog's Workshop. What are we doing today? Well, we're building a cyber stand for our cyber gauntlet. We can't just have the little fella sitting there on a shelf looking like an old potato. We need to make a spiffing stand for our spiffing glove. So with that in mind, we're going to use these digital segmented displays to put on some customized alien writing and a bit of a light show to show off our glove. Lots of little parts involved here, but it really is very simple. Connected to an Arduino along with some ARGB strips, a little bit of codey, and we're good to go. First step, we need to make these little leads so we can connect everything up. The ARGB strips have one positive, one negative, and one data pin. Always a good tip to put a resistor on the data pin. Never quite know what's coming out of your Arduino. Sometimes a little bit strong for these guys. Don't want to burn them out, because once these are glued in, it will be all kinds of the dickens to try and get them out again. Quite a simple little soldering job. Take your time, try not to burn the strip, it is only plastic. And for me, I like to put a little bit of insulation on the data pin, just to stop all of the others nudging into each other, shorting it out, and making the whole thing a boring afternoon. Connecting it to the Arduino is very simple, and here we have some code running. Look at it. Not difficult at all. Look online, find examples and butcher them. Change them, tweak them, and make them your own. It's a great way to learn. Break stuff. It's the only way to go. And then you'll find out why your code doesn't run. Why your code in fact makes the little unit get rather hot and turn itself off. This has happened to me many times until finally I decided I would practice a little bit more. And practice makes permanent, and before you know it, look at this. We've got a little loading screen of alien fonts, and we've got a little scanning beam on the two ARGB strips that are going to go either side of our rather snazzy looking stand. But this Arduino is rather large and cumbersome and a bit too over the top for a project such as this. We'll have to find an alternative, something that can use the same code base but be a lot smaller. And who's this? It's an Adafruit trinket, 5V in this case, and it is basically the same as the Arduino Uno. Requires a little bit of soldering and we've got a heartbeat. Before long, we've got the code in and it's performing exactly the same tricks as the big old Arduino, but in a tiny little tiny size. It's rather wonderful. It connects with USB power, and with a little bit of configuration, you are up and running. It's more than capable of powering this display and the ARGB, just as the Arduino Uno did. Once again, make sure you've got your resistors on those data lines. We don't want anything to go bang. Well, it's a glove, so we're going to need some kind of hand. Enter my hand, and enter a pen, and enter a piece of paper. And there we have a hand. Look at that. Now we're taking a piece of rather thick gauge, but super soft, super bendy wire, and we're going to bend round and round my hand shape until we have something that we think will be able to accommodate the glove. Yeah, that looks about right. But the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Well, in this case, the proof of the wire hand is in the shoving. We need to compress it a little bit to get it inside here, but this wire is super strong. It really will hold its shape, and you can bend and contort the glove to your heart's content, and it will hold that shape. So let's get a nice pose. That looks about right. What do you think? Ooh, back to the printer. What are these strange objects? Well, they're going to come together in a rather interesting way, but first we've got to sort them and sand them. Yes, once again, all kinds of little bibbles and bobbles need to be removed, otherwise they'll look super messy. Lovely. And we're using wood on this project too. Well, sort of. MDF holds together wonderfully with wood glue. Need a nice strong base for this glove stand. So we'll cut out some nice strips and then we'll glue them together, holding them in place with clamps. Also a lot more sanding to be done to make sure that this box looks nice and perfect. And as you can see in the top there, cut out a little notch for the power cable and then some slots for the lighting towers. What lighting towers, I hear you ask? Well, these lighting towers, yes, those strange 3D printed parts are going to be assembled into towers. we have the central spine there that acts to hold them all together with some super glue. So onwards and upwards we just build this tower on and on and on, little pieces, making sure not to stick our fingers together, which is a very large hazard using this Gunji super glue. But the 3D prints went together really quite well, and there wasn't too much trouble. I didn't get anything stuck to anything that wasn't supposed to be stuck to the thing that was supposed to be stuck to, which is a triumph. At least for me, because after I'd made this one, I needed to make another one. And there they are. Prior to filling and sanding, of course, they look a little bit raggedy around the edges, but don't worry, we're going to fix that, and we're going to fix that more or less now. The wooden box comes first, and as you can see, that little hole down there for the power cable has been nicely removed with a Dremel sanding wheel, and the top has been completely smoothed down. It's not until you get primer on it that you start to see some of the imperfections. So here we're going around with some filler, and we're just filling the little gaps that need to be filled. Don't be surprised if you need to do this more than once. Fill, sand, prime, and fill, sand, prime, and fill, sand, prime. Again and again. You'll get a smooth finish eventually though, and it'll all be super worth it. Needing to apply the same techniques to the towers just to make sure they're as smooth as we can get them. Once again, lots of sanding. Lots and lots of sanding. Now, of course, if you've got different kinds of tools, you can approach this in a different kind of way. I've got sanding sticks and sandpaper. Really haven't got much in the way of tools to blast this on a planer or something and try and get it in one fell swoop. For me, I just approach with a bit of elbow grease and a little bit of time. Oh, hopefully not that much time, because there really is an awful lot of sanding. But after a while, it's really rather satisfying. You can feel the surface of this wood starting to almost become like a mirror. Great fun. I think with the Dremel, there would be a temptation to go nutso on it and you potentially take off way more material than you actually intended. This way you can be quite gentle and subtle in some areas, rounding those corners and the inside of this little area here with a great degree of finesse. Something that with a power tool, before you know it, you've drilled a hole in the universe. That's going to be a problem to fix. Now, talking of problems, yes, I cut my thumb. How did I cut my thumb? I actually cut my thumb preparing an apple to eat. Who says they're healthy? Nice to see the box all painted black though. Ooh, that looks good. Right, do these towers fit? By Jove, they fit. This is one heck of a day. Despite the fact that I've now only got one functional thumb, I'm feeling pretty good. Drill a couple of holes in the top of the lid, and this is where the glove is going to sit. While inside we put in a couple of standoffs in order to receive the Adafruit trinket and all of the other gizmos. The most fun of which is going to be that digital segment display. Hopefully we've got the measurements just right and we can push fit this guy in. I don't want to glue it in case I need to maintain it in the future. Perhaps one of the segments will blow out or something. I don't want to have to hack it out of there. A nice piece of 3D printed plastic to fit into the gap, and there you are. That'll provide a nice little diffused screen. Should look rather neat. Yeah, at least it will when it sits in place properly. So there's always a little bit of fettling with these things, a little bit of poking, making sure it clicks into place and doesn't fall out, doesn't require any sort of more substantial fastening arrangements. Look at that. Super smooth. Yeah, and only took 1,000 hours of poking at it with a cocktail stick. Not that bad. Maybe a few minutes, not more than 5. Oh, it's wiring time, and look at that go. We're just checking it there, making sure it all functions before we start to put in the towers, because unlike the digital segmented display, the ARGB strips are going to have to be glued in order to keep them in place. But that's okay. They have their own adhesive backing, so it's actually quite easy to remove them if necessary. They'll just peel straight off, but for our purposes, this is going to be the best way to achieve what we need. It's also doubly handy because they enable us to use that same glue to keep the wires in check. These are the wires that connect one set of tower ARGB strips to the other, so that the Adafruit trinket can communicate to them as if it's one long strip. This enables some more interesting lighting effects, where light can shoot up one tower and then bounce into the other. Sitting in front of those and holding everything in place are 3D printed caps. These have been printed in such a way that they use a hexagon fill pattern. This means that when the light shines through them, it'll look like some kind of weird alien beehive design. Nice. As with anything 3D printed, at least by me and with my printer, there's a little bit of inaccuracy that has to be built into any of these projects and then sorted out later. As you can see if you look a little bit closely here, these towers look a little bit wonky, but once it's all in place, I'm going to be trimming down those edges with a file to make sure everything is straight and true. At the end of the caps there, we leave a tiny little space. This last space is put into place push fit only, just in case I need an easier way to get access to the whole of the strip that lays underneath. Bongo. Getting nearly finished now, and putting the glove in place could not be easier. That wire has held the pose that we put it in earlier, and now all we need to do is feed those two parts through the holes in the top of our case, and then underneath we're going to bend the wire back in order to hold it in place. So no glue needed, and this will mean that we can remove the whole assembly should we need to in the future. So what's left on this project? Is there anything left? Only one thing, and that is to sit back and relax and look at some ludicrously dynamique footage.